Yes, you're reading the title to this video correctly. I really did drop out of school at 15. And no, I'm not just trying to clickbait you for views. For whatever reason you might assume I dropped out, you might think I thought I was going to be a crypto millionaire, or I was unmotivated, or I was lazy, or I didn't enjoy learning. None of those things are actually correct. The real reason I dropped out is very complicated, and it had to do with a myriad of factors in my life at the time that made me decide it was the best decision to make. And a lot of you listening might not agree with the decisions I made, might not accept why I did what I did, but you can at least learn from me, from my experiences and those lessons that I had to fight for, and what I've gained from this experience, even if it might not have been the smartest decision to make from certain perspectives. Now, what you have to understand first to really grasp this story is that I was sort of always a keep to myself, stand in the corner, quiet kind of kid. I didn't have a lot of friends growing up. I never really fit the mold. I was the type to always be up in my room playing with toys, putting on these massive stories, these adventures with my army men and my Lego guys, and I never really played well with other kids in a way. Nowadays, I've definitely gotten better at it. I think as an adult, you sort of learn how to socialize naturally. But at the time, I definitely struggled with that. And so, starting school, it was always, I enjoyed learning. I really enjoyed that aspect of it, but I never really liked being in this crowd of people, having all these people around. It was okay because, I was in a small town, going to a small school, and I knew everyone. But when I was about 8 years old, my parents got divorced, and I ended up moving upstate to this much larger school in a much larger city. And, I didn't have a lot of friends, and I was the new kid, but I was 8, so I ended up eventually just getting by, getting through school, and I got to 8th grade middle school. Now, in 8th grade, I had a couple of friends left over from elementary, a couple of friends I met that year, and that was it. My circle was still very small. And although I definitely didn't enjoy school at the time, it was fine. Every kid goes through that experience. There's ups and downs, there's goods and bads of it. Socializing is nice, being around your friends if you have them is nice. But when I got to high school is really when I started to feel very unsatisfied with the state of, my education in a way. So the school I was going to was in a very sort of upper class city. It was a pretty large school, had like 2,000 people, and this school had a very, very bad reputation. It was known for, just having the worst, most slimy, rude people that were always judging and looking down on you. It was like one of those schools out of the old, stupid high school movies where everyone's like a jerk and they're all like stuck up because they're like popular and rich and they're always looking down on everyone. And it was almost comical how accurately it fit that mold. Like out of any school you could find, it was really like that. And I'd had some older siblings that went to this school, and ironically, all of them either ended up leaving that school or dropping out for unrelated reasons for the most part. But that was definitely hard for me. It felt like a lot of my friends started to move and we drifted apart, and I ended up being the kind of person who sat alone at lunch every day. And now the social isolation was one thing. I was pretty used to that. I was okay with being alone all the time. But that's not where it stopped, unfortunately. Around that time, I started to develop some pretty severe health issues, and it made it difficult for me to continue attending school, which I didn't really mind at the time because I didn't have any familiar faces to say hi to in the halls or sit with at lunch. There was really nothing keeping me going back except for, getting my high school diploma, going to college, getting a degree, all of that. So I figured, okay, if I can't go to school in person, my health issues are really bad, I'll just do online school. So for a long time, about a year and a half there, I did online school. And I liked online school a lot better. It was sort of at my own pace. I could just sit there and do as much as I wanted. I could knock out a semester in a couple of weeks maybe. And it was nice. I felt like I get all the benefits and none of the negatives. But over time, I started to feel like online school wasn't really teaching me anything. It was even more standardized, even more just a slop that was fed to me on a conveyor belt, memorizing information, shooting it out onto some random test that I could easily cheat if I wanted to, and then moving on. So it felt like every day I was just doing menial tasks for no reason at all. I didn't feel like I was learning anything. I didn't feel like there was a point. I wasn't getting any of the socialization. I actually just felt like crap all day. And so eventually I just stopped doing it. I was like, whatever, like, this isn't even teaching me anything. The only reason I would do it is for my high school diploma. So I just stopped doing it, and I ended up fighting with my parents a lot about it, and they said, like, you're not even going to be able to get a job if you don't have a high school diploma. Like, you actually just have to do this. I don't care if it's not even about learning, like, it's just about getting it done, I'd been told things like that my whole life. They're like, really, if you're trying to learn, that's what college is for. High school is just about getting through it. It's really just about getting that piece of paper, just doing what you need to do. And I thought that was stupid, but I always just kind of went along with it. But at that point, I was like, Mom, I feel so crappy. My health is so bad right now. I don't even want to think about just doing some menial, like mundane, like task, like filling out some sheet of homework or some test that actually like isn't even real education. It's even worse than going in person. It's something that ChatGPT could easily do, and there's no point in me knowing this pointless information. I was actually always a very curious kid. I was on YouTube all day learning things, and not just like scrolling on reels like some people do. I was watching Kings and Generals video. I was watching like full like Harvard lectures on physics. Like, I've always actually been very interested in how things work, why the world is the way it is, learning history and science. I wrote a book at 13. Like, I had off the charts English language skills for years. In ninth grade, I went to a fancy prep school where I took Latin, and I was top of my class, and I was taking classical philosophy. Like, I actually was a really good student, but I started to realize there was no point. High school was just about getting through it, getting this piece of paper so that you could go to college, show that, you had completed some curriculum, you had some grade point average, you had some test score with the ACTs and all those, so that the colleges would let you in. It just felt like a means to an end for me. So what I did is, after dropping out of 15, I just stopped doing all my work, and apparently no one comes after you for that. Even though I wasn't allowed to drop out until I was 16, apparently just no one cared that I wasn't doing any of the work. But when I was 16, I went and I got my GED. And if you're not very familiar with what the GED is, it's basically a general education degree. It's like a high school diploma, but you have to kind of test out of all these things. And so I went and I, took all these online courses that were shorter and kind of compact, and I went into this testing facility 4 different times, and I completed a test for math, English language arts, science, and history, and I passed all of them. And so technically, I have a high school diploma equivalent. I can get jobs that require a high school diploma. I can do all those things, and I was only 16 years old. And I could still go to community college. I could still go to a college if I wanted to. Maybe I didn't have crazy marks. I wouldn't be able to get into some nice university, but I could still go to college. It was like no doors in my life closed by doing that. And I felt like I had an extra 2 years before I was an adult where I could get real experience. I started working jobs earlier. I started really just taking more of an interest in my health, trying different diets, like trying to fix my sleep schedule. It's like when I suddenly didn't have to think about school because I'd already gotten my GED at 16, it was like I could really focus on all these other aspects of my life, give them my full attention, and start to work on them. And these were pretty severe health issues, so that was a real burden off my shoulders that I didn't have some specific thing I had to do for 5 hours every day. And that was really nice. What I realized is like school isn't just about education. Really, a lot of the reason people go to school, why they go to college, is for the socializing. Like in this modern world, it seems like that's one of, if not the only way to meet new people. I'm pretty sure there was a statistic released that most people find their significant other, their spouse, at college. And I've realized over the years that my circle of friends is a lot smaller than it used to be. My circle of people I know in my life is practically non-existent. I have my family, I have 1, maybe 2 friends, and it's because I haven't really been meeting new people and I haven't made enough of an effort to go out and do that. It's like I had to leave school for certain reasons, but I could have returned instead of getting my GED. When my health started to improve, I could have fought my way through and tried to just keep at it anyway. But it didn't turn out that way. Sometimes I sort of had regrets about dropping out of school. Sometimes I thought about what it would be like to have a social atmosphere I could show up to, classes with people. I would dream about it a lot, and I would kind of want to go back, but once you have your GED, you can't. I never really considered it. I was always fine with what was going on, but it was like this painful feeling that I was missing out on a high school experience. I never went to any dances. I never went to any end-of-year graduations. I wasn't even there for my graduating class, like when everyone left. Even though some of my friends were there and I could have come as a guest, I just didn't show up. I was on, a ski trip or something with my brother. I don't know. But it was weird. I felt like somehow I had missed out on something. Somehow I hadn't been a part of this social, society of people my age around me, like my peers. No one knew who I was. I had no presence. And it sort of was frustrating a little bit at times that, I didn't really know how to get out there. Sometimes I would go to climbing gyms. I would try to make a little bit of an effort to go and meet people and go to social places, but they really don't exist where I'm from. If you're not 21 and you can't go to bars, I don't know how to meet new people necessarily, except for just friends of friends. And I've had a couple of those over the years, but hasn't quite clicked, I guess. But if there's anything I've really learned from dropping out of school at that age, it's really that school isn't about. Let me rephrase. High school isn't about education necessarily. It's about teaching you social skills, teaching you the ability to show up every day and be consistent and be hardworking and to refine the basics you're going to need for college. It's really about testing and separating, the wheat from the stalk in a way, like seeing who has the potential to go to these Ivy League schools, who's going to go to a state school, who's going to go into a trade, like through some technical program. It's really about just, testing us and teaching us what we're going to need to succeed in our next level of education, which most people have to go through. There are very few jobs you can actually just grab your high school diploma, walk out the door, and make enough money to survive. Basically none. And so it's kind of just a means to an end. It's the same way I felt about middle school. I used to ask my teachers in middle school, what do my grades affect? Like, why do they matter? And they said, they actually don't matter at all. And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, high school grades matter. That goes on your transcript. That's your GPA. That's what colleges look at. But your grades in middle school don't mean anything. It's just like, you need to know this information for high school, and that's when it'll matter. But right now, these grades don't matter at all. And eventually I realized that high school is kind of similar to that. High school is just about getting into the right college, and those colleges are really what matter. And so I started to realize that all of the school program is this giant funnel, just pushing you up to the very top until you can get a high-paying job with that degree. That's the thing that finally matters. The high school diploma kind of matters, but it's not even like you need the skills you learned in school, getting that high school diploma, knowing how to do trigonometry, to flip a hamburger at McDonald's. It's really just they want to see you have the consistency to get your high school diploma, or at least go back and test out and get your GED. If you didn't do any of that, they just assume you're probably not very intelligent, you're probably not very driven or hardworking. So it's really just some great filter, It's some accreditation, like accrediting. I don't know how to even say that, but yeah, that's what I learned, and I think it's interesting. It's made me look at the world in a completely different way.